you so much for introducing me earlier, Lucian. One of the things that I've learned in my 10 years or so of living in community is that community thrives on diversity. And it's actually one of the core functions of bringing true reverence and embodiment of community into the deepest level of kinship connection with each other, to unite in what makes us unique. And one of the things that I thought would be really interesting for us to do together today to help build on what connects us is to, in our introductions that we give preceding whatever I say, it would be really great to connect in a way that we shared a little bit about ourselves from a place that's not on our bio, that's not about the community, that might be a part of our own personal practice or things that we just really enjoy doing, that in some way makes us a highly unique contribution to the communities that we're building and to the collective community that we're all a part of. So for example, I was going to mention that something you might not know about me, and that's not on my bio or something that I talk a lot about, is that I recently started playing the harp. And in my exploration with this instrument, there's a lot of fine tuning. You have to constantly tune this harp and to get the right chords that you're wanting to experience. And that's extremely relevant for me in community building, because it's a constant fine tuning of what is in tone and what's out of tone, and how I can grow into my own self-reflective fine-tuning, as well as provide what's needed in my surrounding communities that could add a higher level of resonance or synchronous sound in a beautiful way. So that's a little bit about me, and I welcome you all into the space. And whoever would like to go next, please do.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And I think we'll have time about, what we do is from 11 till 11:30 each day. It's our yin stage. And it's all about deeply connecting with oneself and each other as a community. Our thesis here is when we synchronize our heartbeats, when we synchronize our breath, when we synchronize our intention, what comes through in the next hour will be that much more potent. It'll be that much more pregnant with possibility around the collective intelligence coming through us. And so that's what this next 30 minutes is about. And thank you so much, Rachel, for that. Who would like to go first? I might call on you, Yasmine, if I just know you're going to nail it. So
I knew you were. So well, it's so lovely to be with all of you. What a pleasure, what a blessing. So I'm Yasmine, and I reside currently in Morocco. That's where I'm from. And something that you might not know about me, I had a dream to go to all 50 states, and I greyhound alone across America, talking to strangers for many years. And it changed my life. Should I call on someone, or yeah? Just...
You can call on someone, actually. Yeah, keep
yeah. I would love for Julian to share his voice.
Thank you, Yasmine. Hi, everyone. So I'm Julian. I'm in San Francisco today. I grew up in Germany, and I think that's what I'm going to share with you guys about something that people might not know about me. Is I have been in several intercultural exchange programs as a youth and teenager and in my early 20s. And learn to live in different cultures and like totally not understand a single word of the languages that are spoken, and had to learn from scratch and go through the diversity of what it means to be like an alien to people over and over again. And it influences how I see the world every day, because it never left me. And yeah, that's, I think, most relevant to this group, to this beginning right now. And I'll pass it to Maya.
Thank you, Julian. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. I live in San Francisco as well. And I actually was born and raised in Israel and also lived in Canada. And one thing that people don't know about me is I have a slight synesthesia. And the way it's pronounced, I mean, my favorite way it's pronounced is that I can think about ingredients and put them into a meal in my head and taste it and go, this will work, or this doesn't work. And then do it, and it actually is exactly the copy of what my imagination was telling me it was. But beyond that, when I think about ideas and when I see people coming together, I will have a vision and then try to put it together. And in community and creating ideas and transformation and innovations, it actually is almost the same thing. So I literally will have a sweet taste in my mouth if community or an idea actually feels right, and I will have a bitter taste in my mouth if it's wrong. And it's very, very visceral. So that's one thing I wanted to share, and I will pass it on to Sheri. Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. You must be fun to have on a team, given that superpower. You could train us. Oh, wow. Well, I'm going to pick up on that thread as well. And I love the invitation from Rachel. So it feels really good to be here. And I've always had I'm clairsentient. So I get a lot of information from feeling. And I also, that feeling is tuned to wholeness. And from the place in which I'm standing, so it's like I have my uniqueness, and then I'm always aware of the whole. So doing things transpersonally and working on behalf of the whole I do that by nature, and it wasn't always easy because I didn't always know what was happening. So I can feel things when they're not quite aligned, and I may not be able to pinpoint it, but more and more and more I can feel like, well, what's out of coherence there, and how can we fine tune this? And it's really allowed me to kind of deepen my own trust of who I am and my capacity to know things in service to a wholeness of what's actually emerging. So it isn't just a static, it's actually in service to who we are becoming. And I think we all have superpowers more than we even imagine. So yes, and I'm going to pass it to Lucy.
Good morning, everybody. It's such a delightful team on here. I'm excited to connect more deeply with all of you. I am really working on sourcing things from what feels true, increasingly inside of my body. And I notice right now, my heart is kind of racing, and some of it is excitement, I think, at seeing all of you. And some of it is really feeling so scattered and heartbroken about what's happening in the world. And so my instinct is for us to really dive deeply into the places that need to be spoken to, where we need to listen. I feel like there's no time for surface conversation right now. I feel really called to hear from diverse voices, and I recognize that all of us share this in common, but I feel all the people who are out on the streets. I feel the people whose incomes are lost. I feel the children who are home in abusive settings. My heart is breaking right now, and I don't want us to pretend that these things aren't true. Of course, I want to speak to the opportunity of this moment and gratitude to be alive, to be part of the change, but really, really committed to getting to truth and knowing that this energy rising up in me is related to a lot of unstable dynamics that I feel very strongly right now. With that, I'd like to pass it to Marcus. Thank you, Marcus, for joining this community this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Yeah, thank you for the invite. Yeah, I want to mirror, some of the things, and actually, I'm just really happy to be in this room with so many brilliant minds and hearts. To mirror Lucy, my heart is just, I don't know, I'm all over the place. I'm feeling so many emotions right now. I grew up in California. I had the ability to play professional football for about 5 years. I pivoted. I've lived in Norway for 10 years, and I've been able to travel the world. Been to about 78 different countries, worked in about 20 different countries, and I've seen a lot of marginalization. I've seen a lot of despair. I've seen a lot of hurt. I've seen a lot of pain. But what I'm learning about myself, and maybe what a lot of people don't know right now about me, is that I'm a deep empath. And I'm finding that out about myself, that I'm feeling everything right now. My mantra and my modalities to kind of do that was to really meditate and listen to my heart in a very physiological way. I would ask myself questions about what was correct. And if my heart started beating fast, then I knew it was something that I shouldn't approach. But if my heart was actually beating calmly when I asked those same questions, then I knew it was something that I should investigate more into. And right now, I feel like I'm a little bit off-centered, with that. And, my calling right now is to create new pathways and to really dive into this ancestral knowledge and wisdom that has been created over a millennium of time, over billions of years, that is in the technology of this earth. And really to use that and to harness that and to use this newfound empathy that's within me to create those new pathways. So I'm just very blessed, and I'm happy that this serendipitously came to fruition. And I look forward to working with each of you in a very real and tactile way. So with that, I want to call on Kunal, sorry.
Thanks for that. Really appreciate that, Maki. Well, I sit here in a very, can anyone hear, everyone can hear me, yeah? Can you guys hear me? No?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. I sit here, where I live is where all the action is in New York City right now. So I have a lot of compassion for what's happening with the George Floyd situation. And then being a former global health scientist, I have a lot of concern around how the riots have also probably reignited some sort of global health crisis in New York and the other cities. So I think, there's this conundrum that we face here now. On one end, there's a lot of pain in the world with regards to the tragedy of George Floyd. And then there's a bigger problem, which is COVID-19, which we haven't solved for either. And I feel like, at least I don't know about any of you as community, conveners, but we've been hit massively. Like all of us, conveners of conveners I've lost all my summits. There's not much for me, and we've all had to pivot to this 2D dimensional Zoom world, which has been very challenging because I thought doing summits at the UN were hard. This is even harder because I enjoyed, I just really enjoyed my being with all of you in person. So my name is Kunal. I got a note from Rachel just now, so I want to make sure I respect time. And I live in New York City, and I look forward to supporting this community in whatever capacity I can. And with that, I'll give it to Nichol Bradford.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nichol Bradford, and I'm the co-founder of the Transformative Technology Community, and we sort of leverage technology for the inner landscape. Well, I guess I'll start with the question, what is one thing you might not know about me that is beneficial to community building? I am a little bit of an accidental convener in the sense that I had, I felt something that I wanted to bring into the world, that I felt like the golden thread pulling to bring into the world. And I have only done things that to enable the golden thread, which means that I'm completely okay with my organization disappearing. At the moment that whatever gets accomplished is accomplished. So what that allows me to do, and what I think that it helps with community building, especially some of the conversations we've had about cross-community building, is my comfort and willingness to federate with other people and to look at areas of our operations where I don't necessarily need to be the one to do things. So it makes me really willing to have a very big tent because I'm not interested in building a museum. I didn't actually, start convening to convene. I did it because what I wanted to, what I felt moved to bring into the world required a group of people coming together to talk about it and to gather. And so as soon as that's done, I'm good and done with it, though I love it. And so that's something that you might not know about me that I think is great for not only my community, but for working on inter-community projects.
Beautiful. Let's make these last couple ones some lightning rounds so that we can stay close to task. I love the information that's happening. Nichol, who do you choose to go next?
I am going to pick someone I don't know. Julian, did you already go? Did he already go? Oh, Julian already went. Oh, Nicolas. Oh, my GSP. That's my littermate from Singularity. Okay. Nicolas.
Hello, everybody. Well, I'm going to talk about something really important because life without fun is not worth living. So I'm gonna share with you my shitty superpower, and I feel everybody should have a shitty superpower. So if I were to have one, mine would be that I have the superpower of appearing in front of people to deliver to them really, really important life messages. But only I can do that for about 15 seconds while they are in the bathroom. So it's frustrating at times. The other thing that I love to do towards community is building forts with sheets and cozy pillows. And around those we tell stories, and I really, really love that. And with that, I'm gonna nominate Christa.
Thank you so much. I love your superpower. That's awesome. I'm Christa Gyori. I am CEO of Leaders on Purpose, and I love this group. This is just wonderful to hear everybody's story. One thing that you don't know about me, or most of you don't know me, so probably that's a big list, but I share something with Julian and I think Maya and Marcus in that I moved very frequently throughout my life. So every couple of years my family moved, and the kids in my family, none of us were even born on the same continent. So I have a real appreciation for diversity. I love people and hearing people's stories. And I'm a really good listener, and I'm a very good associative thinker. So sometimes that helps in situations like these. And I am really honored and delighted to be here with all of you. And I think at a time like this, it's nice to have hope, and we need it more than ever. And I think this group and Lucian bringing us together is a really hopeful and wonderful and one of the most powerful things we can do at a time like this. Okay, with that, I will pass it to my co-founder, Tatiana.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you all. I'm really grateful to be part of this, and wow, I feel the heartbeat, Lucy. Yeah, building on what Chris said, you probably also didn't know so much about me, but since I'm very, very little, I'm a very deep empath, which really brought me to some times in my life where I actually needed to shut it off because it was too strong. And when I was little, I would always, I would already write poems about why don't people see that the system we live in is not what is worth living in. And the only peace, what means only peace, but peace I find close to the ocean. So the transformative power of water. I'm a kite surfer. I love the ocean, the wind. And this steady deepness of the water and the smoothness and transformational effect. And what we really do is what I feel, it's exactly to the point which was made, it's not bringing communities to break together, to bring just together, but it's what is one cause, and now is the time to make this cause highly intentional. It's now the time to really unravel these structures which are out there, and this is why I love to be part of this group and meeting you all and finding all these beacons and going into this one direction, because I think we all feel it, that we can't anymore. Yeah, it needs a little bit more now intentional energy, even beyond and accelerating to new state of system. Yes, thank you. So I will, Maren, I saw you here. I will nominate you.
And just for the sake of time, we'll go about 30 to 45 seconds each now.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Tatiana. And it's so wonderful. And thank you, Lucian, for gathering all of us. This is truly extraordinary gathering of souls. I'm just really deeply honored to be with you all. And I'm also very passionate about community building and cross-sector collaboration and cross-sector alliances to truly make systematic elevations to our current system. And I'm honored to serve at the cross-section of impact investing, philanthropy, and entrepreneurs and SMEs that are doing amazing work in a space. And I'm also a co-founder of Light Space. We are a female-led collaborative consultancy regenerating Mother Earth. So we have several co-founders, and I'm very passionate about female leadership in the space, and how are we coming together as women, and how are we coming together as cross-sector collaborators in alliance building in this sector. So I'm really honored to be with you all, and thank you so much. Just deep bow to all of you and the amazing work that you're all doing. Thank you.
I'm gonna pick David to go next.
Hey, so good to see you all. I deeply feel what you're saying. So one thing you don't know about me, pretty much everything I do stems back to following a dream to Egypt, and an experience which I remember each day, even 10 years later. And in terms of community building and everything else, I feel the hurt and pain, especially Kunal, several others, so we just took charge of the World Indigenous Forum, and it was a great moment of success for them. But at the same time, all of that kind of went through our fingers. It was a chance for great justice after a long history of injustice. Anyway, very happy to be here and wishing you all well.
David, I meant, please go next.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. I'm an old guy, so I'm not some of you know me, I know you. The thing that you probably don't know about me is that when I was 3 years old, one of the earliest memories I have in my life is my father was 6'3", and I was on his shoulders at the March on Washington. Martin Luther King spoke, but I kind of just remember a sea of heads. And I remember getting up that morning at about, it was dark, that's why it stuck out in my head. It was still dark, we were in upstate New York, and there were all these buses. And it was so cool because there was box handed me and there was all this fried chicken and a biscuit. And it was still dark, wow, I'm able to get up and stay up. So I'm sure none of you knew that. So I've had a long history in my life about, so my entire life has been exposed. While I'm a serial entrepreneur, my life has been around the civil rights movement and social justice. And my family's been very, very active in that space. Thanks.
Seth.
Hi, everyone. David, thank you. Again and again, always with you, thank you. You know, I don't know what to share right now because my whole being is feeling so much. And the last thing that I want to do is talk about what I'm up to. I just kind of want to listen. And yet I know that when I come into this group in particular, I am known for at least speaking my truth and what I believe. And so if anything, right now, I believe that we should be listening and we should be following leaders like David, honestly, who hold wisdom of life and also wisdom of culture. And really work on what it feels like to work with our friends, because if we're gonna do this and we wanna do this together, working with friends can mean a whole lot of things, but first it has to mean an immensely immaculate field of trust. And I'm not feeling that right now across our ecosystem. And so I'm just feeling. And I love you all, and I'm here, and I'm gonna listen, and yeah.
Beautiful. Let's see, Brian. And then we'll just do just a couple of words now at this point since we're significantly over. And I just want to be mindful because I know we want to get to the yang and like activate our magical superpowers. So just like one or two words each and go for it.
Rachel, just this is so, I feel the collective emotion of this.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for us to create container for that. So
perfect.
We'll like, I want to ease you on the, I hope you can't hold the timing.
Yeah.
But,
well, you know me, we could stay in yin all day if we wanted to. I was just trying to be mindful of the time because she set the structure for me. So
I think
all boundaries off. Go for it. Let's hear your entire heart, you guys. We love this. This is amazing.
A minute-long boundaries would be great, I think.
And again, the prompt is what we're creating reverence and diversity. What's one thing that we might not know about you that maybe is not on your bio that is a quality or skill that's beneficial to your current community building efforts? Who has not gone yet? Please volunteer yours. Lisa, please go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa, and I'm the founder of something called Collective Hearts. I'm all about spreading more visible love in the world. And something you may not know about me is after university, I moved to Japan. I lived in a very small village, and subsequent to after Japan, I traveled overseas, I backpacked, and I worked for over 3 years in countries where English was not the dominant language. And from an early on stage in all of my experiences, I realized that at the end of the day, the best communication is done heart to heart, and that we do not need language all the time to communicate, and to always look when we meet someone just to see your heart to heart connection, and to look for the best in each other, and to be able to connect eye to eye, and just to learn to, you know, communicate in ways that don't always require words, even though words are unbelievably impactful, and how we can each connect with people and make a difference and enrich each other no matter the language barrier. So that's a little bit about me.
This is Tirza, and I'm also really sitting with what's relevant to share these days, but a few things about me. I spent several years learning how to read the body and the history of our lineage and our individual experiences that are written in the body. And that is not work I normally bring forth, but is always present for me. I can feed enormously large groups of people at a table, and getting people to sit at a table together is a superpower that I miss using. I unlock the creativity and potentiality of other people and teams. And that is my life's work in everything that I do. Much love.
Hi, my name is Noelani, and I'm so grateful to be on this call with all of these leaders, all of you. My biggest inspiration is to inspire hope in others. Hope is how often people engage, and to really do that by bringing forward creativity, play, and the divine feminine. And that's done through singing, because singing actually opens up the heart and it connects us to the magic of our words. So, you know, just as we recognize ourselves as evolutionaries rather than revolutionaries, we get to see that we're all remembering and rewriting this together.
I'm so happy you're here. Thank you. Thank you, Molly.
Hi, my name's Q. Thanks for the invite. I'm in Brazil at the moment, but I'm originally from England. And one thing most people don't know about me is that my mum's Iranian, and I was put in a creche when I was about 2 years old, and I didn't actually speak English. And so I got to experience quite strongly what it is to not be understood and to not understand. And that stayed with me for the rest of my life. And I became like super sensitive to seeing when that was happening, when someone was passing a message and it didn't arrive, or when I was passing a message and it didn't arrive, and seeing the consequences that that has of communication just being sent, and then someone sends it back, but no one's receiving. So that's like stayed with me in my work and the community building, and the importance of like really recognizing all of the parts. So thank you.
Beautiful. I think the only person we have left is Tirza.
Tirza just went. I think.
Okay.
I'll introduce myself. Say hi, everybody. I'm Katya. Similar thread. I also moved to the U.S. From the USSR. Since then, have been kind of an expat, outsider, etc. In France, and then in Singapore. Now I'm back in San Francisco. So this feeling of being an outsider and not belonging when I was younger is something I've carried through in my work, and now creating spaces where people can feel connection with self and others is what I do kind of professionally and in my free time. And one of my secrets, or things that people may not know about me, depending on which part of my life I know them in, is I'm a huge empath and work with my intuition, but also professionally, I'm very good at operations, spreadsheets, analytics. So I find myself very often working in very large machines and then kind of infiltrating large machines and organizations.
Beautiful. Has everyone gone? I think everybody has said their word. Yes?
Amit, we've got to hear from Amit, and then we'll introduce
Oh,
the team.
we didn't hear from Amit. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Amit. Yeah, sorry, I popped in just a little late. Know many of you. It's wonderful to see all of you. My little effort tends to be around bridging, using the right narrative, the world of mainstream capital and mainstream creation with the world of impact, as we currently call it. And this idea that, you know, you've got to take people on journeys rather than define people as to where they are right now. And that's been something that's worked well. And I think it's a big part of the work that all of us have to do, is taking people who aren't currently fighting the good fight to come on the journey with us, because, you know, once they recognize, they want to.
Beautiful, Amit. I'm so happy you're here. There's so many of my favorite people in this gathering. So I want to introduce myself and then Joshua and Brian here, who I'm going to be playing the role as game host this week. And then we've got Joshua and Brian as co-facilitators, and we're going to be experimenting with our roles here to support this, along with Rachel and Sheri's here on the team, and Marin, and we've got you know, Maya's been helping facilitate another unanimous game. So there's lots of like people here helping with the co-creation. Just to before I go to next stage and what we're going to be doing for Yang, my thing that I don't talk about on bio that I think is something I contribute to communities is I call it FQ, future intelligence. And it's that I believe that we have an intelligence in our intuition that actually is like listening to waves from the future. I think of it almost like as a spider web that goes beyond time. And the more we exercise that intuition and listen to the future, remember the future, the more we can hear and the more we can be agents of change, constantly making decisions in the moment to optimize towards that future state. And so that's something I do nonstop. And I think it's one of the areas I kind of contribute most to my community around me. With that said, this is Joshua.
Hey everybody, it's great to hear from all of you. So many familiar faces on this call and others I don't know. I'm very excited about this community game. It's been an intense several months. This last weekend, there's definitely a lot, especially living in the city of San Francisco, and just facing, you know, in a piece of what a lot of people don't know about me, I'm a grandfather. In this life, in this body, I've raised a family in the suburbs in the United States, and I'm coming into the reality and facing a lot of what it means to be white and silent. And that's a difficult thing to swallow, and something that I'm facing, you know, very forward. And how can I show up and be better? And in those times, you lean into community. And the way that we're shaping our communities is critical to the way we're trying to rebuild, essentially, and create new, because it's obvious that what we've been doing isn't working. So I feel inspired and excited, and my heart is open and listening. Seth said, you know, really a good time to listen. So I'm here to support in regards to logistics and movement and keeping the game moving, but also in a place of deep listening to come to better understanding, so that I can just be a better human and show up for everyone in this world. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Brian, do you want to?
Hey everyone, it's good to see so many friends here on the call. I have been, I think, exploring systems change and evolution in the large process that it is, trying to understand the planet and this Earth as an ecosystem through different layers and levels of community, from the cells that make up all of biological life to the different ecosystems through which humanity emerged. I've been exploring that from like a research perspective, but then I'm also very attuned like to subtle energies and like on an energetic level, what's alive and present in us, in our bodies, in our beings, and using that, those practices of mindfulness and contemplative practices to help us be in relation to things that are so much larger than ourselves, but also stay present and in our own relationship to our heart's path and our heart's awareness that can help bridge these divides that currently are sort of blocking the true connection that exists between all of us.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much, Brian. Well, so welcome everyone. It's just, what a team to gather. What I wanted to do next is just provide a bit more on the context of yin and yang. And actually, interestingly, Sheri just gave some real-time feedback. I think, Sheri, it would be great for you to share that, because I kind of agree with you. We're building that. This is game number 3. And so each game we're learning new things about how to facilitate this process to collective intelligence. And this was a great piece. Do you want to share that, Sheri?
Yeah, sure. I wasn't thinking you were going to read it, but you are you have such skills with your multitasking with so much presence. I think that's another of your superpowers. So what I had just said to him, just feeling the field, was that maybe in the game design, because we're all really part of the process. We're consciously evolving the systems around us. So we're in a game right now, and we're creating a world that is going to be a more thriving world for all. So how can we apply that intelligence to our very process? And my suggestion was that we start with Monday as just all yin. Just go deep. Let us build the relational field between each other, because I heard Seth speak to the kind of the question of trust. And I think that, my heart, and a lot of us are empaths, and it's almost like, are we ready to go to yang? Do we need to just allow ourselves to steep a little bit more and open up a different process? I don't have a suggestion for that process, but I'm sure that the intelligence here will, and the wisdom here will reveal that. So that was, and then we would go into more yang, beginning tomorrow, as we also learn to really do the deep listening, yin, and the relational field building, as we're starting to engage with more of the tangible yang action.
Yeah. No, Sheri, I saw that ping, and I really felt it, because we can all feel the shared frankly, the shared heartbeat. A friend of mine said this weekend, Joshua's best friend, the heartbeat of the warrior beats as one. It just really sat with me. And this moment that we, as action-oriented, community people, are very action-oriented. We want to get our hands dirty. We care about being effective. And so I think that's one thing that's, the moment that we're in, it's kind of come to a boiling point, and it's like a pressure cooker, and it's it can't contain anymore. And the thing that's on my heart so much is please let this not go violent. It's violent in pockets, but it could be a whole lot more. And so really feeling the need here, the sacredness with which we hold this work, this reverence to what we're co-creating here, is this return to community as a society, to remember who we are, to remember how we've organized for so long. And so just feeling that, and would love us as we move forward to share from that place of deep vulnerability. That your prayers for what does it mean as a society in your eyes to return to community? How can we think about that from this moment in time? Because what the game is all about is community solutions for the planetary commons. So we know the role of the commons has played a key part in holding communities together for a long time. And so it's kind of back to the ancient future that we're proposing here. And so what the game does is every 2 weeks, we're taking a journey on a kind of pillar of society, and going, starting with sound, and then food, and now community, and then the unanimous charter. It's a unifying document. And then we're doing a game on the game, bringing game designers together. Then we're doing reimagining capitalism, and we're doing land stewardship, and then we go on to humanizing trust. And we're taking pillar by pillar. We'll be then focusing on racial justice, pillar by pillar, and bringing together the collective intelligence and, frankly, kind of collective prayers of as diverse group of kind of like archetypal leaders as we possibly can get. And then it's about synthesizing that into fundable solutions that we can stack together. And so that's a little taste. I want to get that clear up front, is it's a little taste for the journey we're on. Is it's all about discovering what is the collective intelligence applied into community solutions, so we can stack them together and go to funders, because our hypothesis is it's a lot easier to raise money for a whole menu of systemic change community solutions than it is leaving those community solutions out there as a lone wolf when it comes to funding. So with that said, I'd love to invite the next question as we go through to finish 12:30, and then we're going to come back tomorrow at 11 a.m., connect with each other, and then we'll go into an invitation of like, what do you see as the 8 most important pillars that we can discuss as areas for innovation for community and society, and we'll ask that question. But for now, let's go on to like what just go outwards a minute and say what is your prayer for the role community will play in transforming our world in the next decade?
May I share something? There's a quote that ties into what you're saying really nicely, and so I'll make this my contribution for the prayer. It's an environmental scientist, Guth Spurth, and he said, "I used to think that the top environmental issues were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we as scientists don't know anything about this." And so what I'd like to contribute to this collective prayer is whatever it is that's at the center of our heart and our cause is to also just recognize that our ability to reawaken a spiritual awareness, and that may mean something very different for everybody, is that what I'm putting into this prayer.
May I go next? Because I was pulling up my favorite quote of Thich Nhat Hanh, and I also have to leave in 4 minutes. Apologies. So Thich Nhat Hanh says it is possible that the next Buddha will not take the form of an individual. The next Buddha might take the form of a community practicing understanding and loving kindness, a community practicing mindful living. This may be the most important thing we can do for the survival of the earth. And I've just been holding that for years now. Also wanted to bring in the work of Jamaica Stevens that I was part of, Re-inhabiting the Village, co-creating our future as a blueprint for that, and also the work of actually the World Economic Forum and other, and C40 and Resilient Cities that now is defunct, about creating that same conversation on the megapolis conversation, that can we actually bring the sense of community back into the major cities that we're living in. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. I'll go next because I will also be leaving at the top of the hour. But I really feel that the prayer for now, and has always been, I believe, is the embodiment of biospheric communication technology from the ancient future. Meaning that we have the ability as life on Earth to communicate in a way that imbues all of the ancients of whose shoulders we stand on, all beings on this planet, especially those who do not have a voice, and the future of which we're choosing to orient ourselves to. And I believe that if we can develop the capacity to speak to each other and ourselves the way we would when we're in the highest state of prayer and communion with divine or the most beautiful aspects of nature, I believe that there's nothing that we can't do. There's nothing that we can't create that doesn't bring us more kind, compassionate creativity in the world that becomes the antidote that somebody spoke to earlier, that would not be the scientific antidote to the world that we see, but rather the innate impulse within us to create from. Thank you.
If I can go next, Joshua, where is your beautiful fiance? Congratulations, by the way. That was beautiful. Couldn't imagine two more beautiful people coming together. I love we've probably all heard this quote, but I love the quote from Ram Dass, we're all just walking each other home. And, it can't be more true than, everything that we're seeing happen around us right now. And I think, one of the aspects of community is that for too long, we've thought about community in almost like a static sense, that community represents a single issue or a single thing that binds us. And that's exactly what's wrong, I think, with even our politics today, right? That we just get around kind of this one thing. And the reality of life and the beauty of community is that we have so many things, the fabric of those things that bind us are myriad. And as we design for how we bring community together, I think it's so important for us to allow for that to happen, that we can come together and weave in and out across the different things that are important, because everything is showing to us now that it's not just one issue and one type of people or one demographic. And so as we design for that, I think it'll be so important to design in a way that allows for us to let our interests weave in and out, and we can still use the platforms we create to help promote all of those efforts. So just my quick thought there.
Beautiful. So this is a perfect example. So I can see a thread here emerging as what's called an upload, which is one of the 8 areas, and it would be around community interdependence. Mm-hmm. So like community mutuality, we can start to think about that thread, and it's going to be one of kind of 8 pillars that we think about. So awesome contribution. Thank you.
Can I share off the back of that, because that speaks to what I wanted to bring, which is for me, community is about sharing risk, intentionally sharing risk, choosing that where we're not sharing risk. I think we're talking about networks. I think when we talk about community, we're talking about sharing risk. And then the other pillar for me is the lifting up of all, because we often focus around problems and solving problems, but we've got a scarcity of resources. Well, we haven't. The way we're using it, it's scarce. But the main resource that we're not tapping into is all of the humans that are being like, their talents are just, they're not being channeled. So for me, it's about sharing risk and lifting up all. I think I trust that every human has a deep desire to contribute and gets joy from contributing and seeing themselves contributing. And whilst that's not happening, then the rest is a consequence, I feel.
Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, so I love root words, and I love that the root word of community is communist, which is shared by many, and the other word is unity, which is to come together. And time and time again, I know that at the end of the day, all that matters is love. And what I appreciate and value is that we're all in this together, and we're really coming together to enrich and uplift people. And if we can just keep coming back to like the heart-to-heart connection, I think that's invaluable.
Lisa, I love that mention of the heart to heart. I'd like to add also soul to soul and mind to mind, because my feeling is, the first curiosity that I have is, how do we define community? We're so privileged to be part of so many incredible communities And so many people in the world don't even know what that means, the feeling of feeling the heart connection. And so I feel that we have a responsibility to bridge and to bring people into this field of love, and then interconnect communities. You know, I'm part of the Moroccan community, and there's the refugee community, and then there's all these leaders communities, and sometimes I feel like, I look around the room and I feel like we're leaving a population behind, and we have a responsibility to invite and really reflect on who's around us, who are we talking to every day. So that would be my perspective.
Hi, it's Nicole. I have something to add. I would like, as a part of our prayer, I would like it to not just be or expand. I would like, I love being conscious that we're talking about, but I'm also interested in having some very clear principles around conscious leadership and what that means in, the interpersonal ways that we really show up with one another. And what I mean by that is often when you look at conscious communities and where they sometimes aren't as dynamic as they could be, is that there is sometimes such a focus on the aspirational about what conscious should be like, that the skill level, that everyone's at a different level of skill in terms of where they are with their own with themselves and how they communicate, how they problem solve, how they negotiate, and all of these things. And so, I feel like it's important to have a commitment to consciousness, but to also have a commitment to conscious leadership, with one another as we are doing this, especially once we start talking about creating value together. It becomes even more important to just be really explicit about it, because that is the thing that allows us to always be hyper transparent, that will allow us to work together. So my wish, my prayer is not just consciousness and love, but conscious leadership, and assuming or having a set of principles about how we interact with one another, that is something that, whether someone is, whether someone is like completely enlightened in the cave or, just like starting to move into their heart. It's all, things that everyone can work with. So we all have a shared language and process.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in because that touches very much on what I wanted to say, which is I've been seeing, especially this past week with everything that's going on, especially in the US, a tremendous amount of spiritual bypassing. And I think we need to be extremely aware of this, like extremely aware. Change is going to come from, yes, consciousness, but also policy making and walking our talk and creating communities where we actually do what we say. And this is very, 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 very important.
I'll jump in after that. The prayer that's coming to me actually is for our blind spots to be known. I think that is, there's, the way the human mind works, I'm a social psychologist and I've studied this my whole life, is we all have these lenses through which we see which we think we see reality. And so I think the greatest spiritual path to be on is to be able to really look from other vantage points and to see like what we're missing. And so I think culturally this is happening right now, particularly for privileged white people, to be, sort of truth laid bare, although still there's all these lenses in the way. So really, honestly, my prayer, what I try to do for myself and what I think the world needs is to be able to take off the blinders, to be able to see the painful truth and to let it into our hearts and to let the grief be there, to be united in our grief and united in our humanity, because only then can we really address the incredible pain and suffering of humanity and all of the animals and nature as well.
That's very beautiful. I'm going to jump in there.
Make a
So,
point on that. And,
Lucian.
So what I'd love to do as people are sharing is give an example of where we can see the threads going forward, so we're all tracking. So, you know, what you just described there as community blind spots, perhaps, as an effort of like, this is the best methodology we can collectively distill around how we can be maximally aware, as deeply committed to the healing journey for community leaders as possible. So that might be one of the pillars. And another one of the pillars, Nichol, what you brought in and around conscious leadership or community leadership, looking like as we evolve into the Unified Planet Community Alliance, what is the structures that we could put in place that would give communities around the world the ability to say, yes, I commit on my honor to that. Mm-hmm. And that's like the purpose of the Alliance. And so what just want to kind of point out what's going on here is, as we're distilling all of this collective intelligence from the group, we're thinking, okay, where are the different pillars so that as we go forward, we can have a comprehensive like synthesis here. So David, do you want to go next, or Julian? Maybe...
Yeah. I'm on the stack too.
Cool.
I think Julian and then David and then
Julian and then David.
Does that feel right, David?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, cool. So thank you, Lucian, for distilling the pillars already. So there's a lot of great things already said, and I really love when things are being honored of what's being brought in from multiple sides. So I'll just add something to it. My prayer is that we look at all of this from a larger time stream and kind of zoom out into a 7-generational perspective behind us, but also forward. So if everything we're thinking, doing, praying, embodying right now leaves a trace, so what is that trace for the next 7 generations? That's roughly 210 years. It's maybe a little bit out there for some people, but let's just imagine that everything we do has a direct impact to our grandchildren going forward. And so to kind of sense make between the esoteric and the very pragmatic, I think part of the prayer is also that it's people, planet, and profit, right? It's one of the most simplified ways to kind of connect with where our current world is happening. If we're not doing things for the well-being of the planet and for the well-being of the people, there's no sense in it. I think everyone is aligned on that already, but it needs to connect with where profit happens right now, so we're not completely needing to reinvent everything.
Thank you. Good point, Julian. And a big piece of the prayer, in my opinion. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. So just going back to what Lucy said and then building on the pillars. In terms of the blind spots, I would say humanity is blind, both physically and mentally in many ways, and has been so for a very, very long time. And I can break that down at another time, but we don't have too much time. In terms of the pillars of civilization, we went out to 90 indigenous nations leaders on the 9 pillars of civilization, and the values we choose to invest in and consume determine the future societies that we build. And for them, the number 1 in the pillar for, and community came around number 3rd, común, unidad. The number 1 for them was spirit. And I really would like to pause just for a second there, because people say spirit, but I'm a practical person. Look, I've been an economist, a banker, I've worked advising heads of state, all these kind of things. But when you put spirit into the equation, when you actually add it into the equation, when you take that, you're talking about, Julian, 210 years. When you account for a human soul, when you account for the fact that the likelihood is that if indigenous people are right, and it's not an if for me, it's a real reality, you're talking about valuing your life in the context of a multi-billion-year being. Okay, so that changes your relationship with every soul on the planet, because they're essentially you in different garments. So our entire belief system is corrupted in many ways. And as much as I love Branson's People, Planet, Profit, and I was a big fan of his, I feel that we're still anemic there in the value systems that create fulfillment. So lastly, in terms of community, in terms of prayers of community, is that we would return to a sense of what is true fulfillment in life, that we would create a model of community that liberates humanity from the shackles of living to survive, rather than essentially driven by both our own spiritual growth and the ascension of our own race of humanity, that we would have a different impetus and motivation for creating in life and for getting up in the morning.
You know, can I share? Because I loved.
Let's have Sheri go. She was in the lineup, and then you.
Okay. Whoever's next.
Can I go after Kunal?
Thank you, Joshua. This is amazing. My whole being is all lit up. I feel the collective intelligence like pulsing through all of humanity through us. So I'm just feeling a lot of emotion and gratitude, because this is my passion, what we're talking about here, and what you just said, David, about like, for me, it's like we're creating a foundation for a new planetary operating system with what we're talking about here, nothing less. And the spiritual bypassing and all these ways of being that have been built on a mechanistic universe, and on like the blind spots is like sometimes ignorant, sometimes intentional. And the more we are truly have an ethical foundation that we can hold each other accountable to, I feel like we have just let each other, I don't know why I'm feeling all emotional, but I am feeling emotional, but I feel like we have ignored the things that are right in front of us, and it's led to a lot of the lack of integrity everywhere. It ripples out from right here and it goes out. So the level of integrity that we are willing to like stand for in all our evolutionary relationships, co-creator agreements. I mean, I've been in this world for like at least 2 decades. How do we create a structure of belonging? Peter Block's book, Community, A Structure of Belonging, is a really fabulous, like has some great roadmaps, and he calls upon different things. So I just really want to plant that that anchor of ethics for the foundation of our planetary operating system, because we're all in community and we're all in communion and interdependence, and that healing starts here, and then it's all of this and the relational alchemy, and being courageous enough to do your own work and hold each other accountable for when we see people who are like, they're not. You know, we don't really have councils. We rely on the judicial system to hold each other accountable. And I think that if we can really like lovingly hold each other to that higher standard of who we know we can be and how to show up, we can be of great service to the planet right now. And I'll just say one more thing. I'll send a link to it, but I saw a powerful interview with there were 3 African-American women, and they were talking about the difference between a white ally and co-conspirator. And it's like, we don't really need your allyship. We need like what it was that it took to be the Underground Railroad, and that it was this foundation of trust. And there's something to me going on where we're birthing, there's a kind of underground railroad that's happening that's like maybe above ground and not underground.
Oh, Sheri, thank you so much. Kunal, please share with us.
Well, I really resonate with a lot of what David said. I don't know how many of you have suffered the past few weeks, few months, but I've really had an awakening of many awakenings. I call it the awakening of awakenings. I pride myself on, being the Black Labrador, being loving, generous, kind, you know, and then the shadow side of that is that I've had a lot of people backstab and let me down in the recent past. So it's kind of forced me to become the Black Panther. And that creature is very vicious and very, you know, very different from the Black Lab in me. But I feel like right now, you know, maybe I'm not projecting the love you guys have. I want to be in the arena. I want to be the man in the arena. I've actually called on arms with all of my friends to get into the arena with me. And I feel like I'm more looking for ways to show up authentically than to be in states that are not authentic to myself. And right now, although I'm seeking love and I'm striving for it, I don't feel it. Not with the way Trump has, you know, behaved. Not with. And by the way, I mean, talk about answering the question. One thing you guys may not know about me is I live in the Trump Tower, and there's a beautiful story behind that. It's not about Trump, and it's not about, you know, it's not about Trump or achievement. It was about my father. But the reason I share this is because everything David said really resonated to my core as far as where we are here and now. And I don't want to show up as something that I'm not. I loved what Seth said in the beginning, where I just want to sit and listen so that I can show up in service, you know. But I honestly, right now, I don't know what that means. Meaning, I want to be truthful about, you know, I think many people are selfish with this layer of love and giving and kindness. But the truth is, a lot of us community builders, I'm going to call it out, we have massive egos. Massive egos. I mean, I'll call myself out. I have a huge ego, you know, and then when it comes to community of communities, it becomes even more, what's it called, complex, because you're going to have to let go of ego. And how do we do that as leaders, on purpose, or, you know, purpose-driven leaders, or just human beings on earth? And that's something I want to show up authentically for. Like, how can I be of service? How can I support you guys without losing my, you know, truth and being true to myself? So that's something that I like to share with the group. And you still have my allegiance, but I'm just very earnest about where we are.
And I can completely relate to that feeling as well, of just, you know, for me, the example was, you know, and marching this last weekend and feeling the anger within the community and the people walking, and then to see what happened in our city that night, you know, things looted and broken, and, you know, it was violence. And for the first time in my life, feeling like really okay with that and being like, yeah, you know, burn it down, loot it. That's uncomfortable in my body and my system, and I want to understand it, and I want to understand where that's coming from. You know, from what I know right now, it's trauma, and that's what it looks like coming out. And to hold a space for that, for us all to be allowed to feel it, to talk about it, and to be authentic as you are now, Kunal, like that's a key piece to what we are building as a community and trying to build a larger community.
Marcus.
Can I hop in?
Please, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for everybody's mind melds. And, you know, one of the prayers that I really have is bringing back the planet as a stakeholder. You know, I think that we are really missing the edge. There's been a severance, you know, which has allowed a lot of this disconnect between human to humans, just because we have lost our devotion to the planet. And ultimately, you know, I believe that there is a model that I tried to go by, which is being pushed to my edge. And EDGE is really serving as an acronym to where E stands for education or deschooling, you know, really getting away about those old pathways that have really got us to this point. And then the D stands for devotion, you know, it's really about that ecological learning, you know, how do we actually build something within the system where we can relate back to this natural intelligence. And the G is this guidance. This is that ancestral wisdom that we can call upon in order to be informed about where we are right now or where we need to be. And then the last one is E, is this emergence. This is when we do the co-conspirating. This is when we do the relational learning and experiential learning where we're working with the other. And I think, you know, as we kind of build these things in space and time, we just have to be mindful that trust interweaves, like Seth, you hit it on the head, where that trust interweaves and connects all of these things. And I really look at it as a mantra of, you know, dropping down communities and having them be almost like distributed networks where they work together to not only do communal transformation, but self-transformation, where you connect back to this regeneration of the planet and draw that line through to self-transformation, draw another red line to communal transformation, and then the distributed networks works together to ultimately draw that red line to communal transformation. So yeah, and that's kind of my mantra, but I wanted to leave with kind of a quote with Buckminster Fuller. You know, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that's where we are. And I think if we get back to that, putting the planet as a stakeholder in all of our decisions, then we will have that mothership, we will have that kinship that draws and informs us to a lot of the things that we're trying to do for the future.
Thank you, Marcus. If I may add to that, I mean, it's probably adding to all what you all said, but particularly Sheri, David, and Marcus here. It's about how can we enable at one point of building the future of this new system, building the pathway, but at the same time enabling communities today operating like a new operating planetary system on these principles, which are basically really where the values come from the core, and unravel exactly all these things our ego thinks is real and important, whilst drawing the whole planet and every life being basically into this journey, so that so that we can elevate our planet, and that at the end of the day, and then I have to say this about obviously this the profit value, so that we are actually in living and embodying already today the values we want to live in from the best of ourselves in the future, but putting such intentionality behind that, with such a leadership in all these kind of pillars which are so important into that this journey is actionable, is seen globally, so more and more people can join, because it is also now the time that this doesn't happen only organically, and I think this is really important, and I think this is why we all feel this urge of doing it, because we are fed up and it's time to act. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Tatiana, thank you so much. It's yeah, I think you're threading the needle here of the collective, and what we want to do is be respectful to the time container we set each day, which is from 11 till 12:30, and then we go into this crazy day where we go and start the next game and then the next game. So we've got a full day ahead, but just maybe invite last one or two reflections. And just as we've been going through, we really are listening here, Brian, Joshua, and myself, and then everyone else that's helping coordinate and share intelligence. And so we're trying to distill and find what are those memes going to be around that kind of contain what we're saying. And so, you know, just some potential pillars that we're going to bring in tomorrow. We've got community belonging. We've got community bright spots. Thank you very much, Lucy, for that like upgrade, going from blind spots to bright spots. We know from what you've done, Lucy, with John Hagel, that movements are most effective when they stand for something rather than when they stand against. And so just thinking about that from the power of language we use in these pillars. Community ritual or reverence was one that was definitely coming up, and thinking about that. Community councils we talked about. Community interdependence, Amit, you mentioned this. Community narrative. So like how we use storytelling intentionally right now, and how we connect a planetary network of communities to tell the story of these transition times is going to be a huge role. And what you mentioned earlier around the narrative around connecting capital to impact is a story in itself. So that's a big part of what we're doing in the community commons and what the whole harvest is about. So we then had community union. Lisa, you were talking about this. So thinking about ways of bringing together a community of communities, this notion of the United Nations of communities, and thinking about what that could actually look like. Because most of our global institutions are like not, communities don't feel part of them. You know, it's very rare. Communities don't really feel part of the World Health Organization or the World Bank or the UN, etc. And then finally, Tatiana, community values. So thinking about how we can create a set of values that could unify communities as well. So some of these are already interdependent, and we see that every week. So with that said, who would like to do the final word before we move
I just have to add one thing.
Sure, please.
I feel really strongly about community leaders acknowledging the need to develop skills. So not just like the deep trauma work, but like the actual skills for working together in large groups, and for those to be shared and transparent, especially if you're creating value, and especially if you actually want to go into action. It's like, I think at this stage of my life, I can only really join groups that, you know, are really clear that even though we might be running communities, it doesn't mean that we're actually as good at it as we think we are. And so finding a set of shared ways of working together that are transparent, like how do we handle conflict? How do we handle disappointment? How do we handle gossip? How do we handle like all of these things? Because that's what breaks communities down. And I keep pushing it because I so believe in what we're doing. And so that's one area that I would really like to see.
Beautiful, yeah. And that might come as community leadership, or even potentially like community genome has been something we've seen in others develop, where we're looking at like kind of the A to Z of community best practices and sharing that, and bringing like the Community Genome Project in and others. You know, Fabian, some of you will know. So I was like, he's totally missing from this competition, and we'll invite. But yeah, thank you so much, Nichol, for that. And this is where this week is a co-creation. You know, we'll do our best to facilitate the synthesis of the collective intelligence of those that have come together, and let's make this historic together. You know, we're at a moment of history being made, and there's people here, I have no doubt, not a shadow of doubt, are like born to be part of these transition times, and that we're holding front row seats, and so just recognizing that, and recognizing the potency of this moment that's been long prophesized by Indigenous communities. You know, these are what I would call apostolic times, and so just recognizing that as we go in, and the game is a direct, you know, response to that. The game is, you know, Marcos, you mentioned the Bucky quote about, you know, if you want to create a new system, you know, don't fight the existing reality, build a new model, makes existing model obsolete. Bucky's conclusion was the new world game. And so part of what we're doing here is really looking to distill this new planetary operating system that we discussed, and distill that being led by communities. So with that said, we want to respect your time and see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. And just so delighted. Thank you, everyone, for, I feel like we could do a lot more together, and we absolutely will. So yeah, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. God bless.
Thank you,
Ciao, ciao.
Lucian.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Lots of love.
Bye.
You all.